I don't need the day to move. I just need the wall to move a little. Yeah, I made a room out of one bad thought. Kept the chair too close to the door. Kept measuring the same small mark, like it had to mean something more. There was dust on the mirror, but I called it a sign. There was a crack in the wording and I called it mine. I used to make the space smaller just to know where I stood. Kept folding every maybe till it stopped looking good. But the line can move back without asking my name, and the thing I was afraid of can stay almost the same. Maybe I don't need a new answer. Maybe I don't need a clean view. Maybe the room only has to get wider by an inch I can move through. Give me latitude for the part of me that arrives unsure, for the thought that takes the longer way around the door. I don't need a brighter reason, I don't need a perfect sign, just a little more allowance where I kept drawing the line. Yeah. Give me latitude when the old voice tries to make it small, when one unfinished feeling starts pretending it is all. Yeah. I can stay inside the moment without making it a test. If there's room enough to breathe before I answer the rest. A little wider, not easier, just wider. Yeah. I had the map turned wrong, but I kept blaming my feet. Kept saying I was late to a place I didn't need. The corner store lights made halos on the rain, and I almost made that lonely, then I let it stay plain. There's a skill in not naming every passing shade, not turning one loose feeling into something I have to obey. So I leave the root imperfect, leave the reason half drawn. Let the old pressure pass me without pulling my coat on. I don't call it progress, I don't dress it up clean. I just notice the edge is not as close as it seemed. The thought says come back, make it exact, make the old mistake, prove where you're at. But I'm less convinced now, less quick to agree, less willing to make a closed room out of a passing thing. And maybe that's the whole shift, not a door, not a flame, just the border getting softer without changing its name. Give me latitude for the part of me that arrives unsure, for the thought that takes the longer way around the door. I don't need a brighter reason, I don't need a perfect sign, just a little more allowance where I kept drawing the line. Yeah. Give me latitude when the old voice tries to make it small, when one unfinished feeling starts pretending it is all. Yeah. I can stay inside the moment without making it a test. If there's room enough to breathe before I answer the rest. And if the day stays partly tangled, if the wording doesn't land, I can still move through the middle with a little room in hand. That's what changed, not me, not much, just the size of the room I thought I had to touch. Yeah. There's a kind of mercy that doesn't sound like mercy. It sounds like leaving one drawer open and not checking it again. It sounds like missing one message and not becoming the miss, like walking past the mirror without fixing the whole face. I was never asking for rescue, just a wider place to stand, where the unfinished parts of me don't get counted as the plan. So I let the mark stay crooked, let the paper keep its bend, let the sentence lose its border before it reaches the end. The room is still narrow, but it isn't closing in, and that might be the first place where the next part can begin. Give me latitude for the part of me that arrives unsure, for the thought that takes the longer way around the door. I don't need a brighter reason, I don't need a perfect sign, just a little more allowance where I keep drawing the line. Give me latitude when the old voice tries to make it small, when one unfinished feeling starts pretending it is all. I can stay inside the moment without making it a test. There's room enough to breathe before I answer the rest. Give me latitude, not to disappear, not to turn the heavy thing into something clear, just enough room for the next small try to come through sideways and still be mine. I don't need the day to move, I just need the wall to move a little bit, and it does. not far, just enough to stop being the whole room. There was a way through the set of it, not marked, not clean, not meant to impress. I kept facing the front of the problem while the smaller path waited left to the fence. Yeah, I had the whole day looking official, like I needed a stamp to pass. Kept my reasons in a straight little stack, kept my fear dressed up as facts. A sign leaned wrong by the service road, letters worn down by rain. I almost missed the narrow way in because it didn't announce my name. Yeah, yeah. I thought the only way forward had to look like a door, had to open with force, had to prove something more. But some relief comes sideways through a gap nobody sells, where the pressure loses language and the hard part tells less. Yeah. There's an easement through the way I gave the day, a small permitted passage where the old fear used to stay. I don't need to own the road, I don't need to clear the view. I just need a way across that doesn't ask me to become new. Yeah. There's an easement past the thought that blocks the gate, where I can pass beside it without calling it escape. Not a victory, not a lesson, not a line that turns bright, just a narrow kind of mercy letting me move through it tonight. No banner, no clean start, no speech in the parking lot, just a cut behind the building where the locked feeling forgot. I kept making one hard corner, standing for the whole street. Kept saying I can't move with the map under my feet. Then a little access open, not enough to make me proud, but enough to stop the old thought from speaking quite so loud. There's a fence around a memory, I don't need to take it down. I can walk along the border till the sentence thins out. There's a debt I never signed for, still asking to be paid. I can leave it at the window and step past the claimant made. Maybe I was not behind, maybe I was overruled by a smaller, older panic that had learned to sound like proof. Maybe I can keep the question without letting it decide. Maybe not every locked thing needs my whole life on its side. And the day gives nothing grand, no answer in the glass, no perfect line arriving to correct the way I pass. But the route gets slightly usable, the edge becomes less sure, and the part I thought would stop me turns into something I can move around. There's an easement through the way I gave the day, a small permitted passage where the old fear used to stay. I don't need to own the road, I don't need to clear the view. I just need a way across that doesn't ask me to become new. There's an easement past the thought that blocks the gate, where I can pass beside it without calling it escape. Not a victory, not a lesson, not a line that turns bright, just a narrow kind of mercy letting me move through it tonight. And if the main road stays closed, if the answer keeps its shade, I can still find one thin crossing where the pressure gives away. I was allowed through, not because I earned it, not because I fixed the fence, just because some parts of the day don't need to belong to me to let me pass. I don't have to make it meaningful, I don't have to make it clean, I don't have to turn the almost into proof of anything. There's a way that doesn't sparkle, there's a way that doesn't show, there's a way that feels like nothing until you notice you can go. Not far, not fast, not fully unafraid, just around the corner that used to hold the day. So I leave the front gate standing, leave the old sign bent, leave the locked up explanation where all my energy went. The path is not beautiful, the path is not wide, but it doesn't ask for every version of the doubt I kept inside. Right where there's an easement through the way I gave the day, small permitted passage where the old fear used to stay. I don't need to own the road, I don't need to clear the view. I just need a way across that doesn't ask me to become new. There's an easement past the thought that blocks the gate, where I can pass beside it without calling it escape. Not a victory, not a lesson, not a line that turns bright, just a narrow kind of mercy letting me move through it tonight. There's an easement in the part I couldn't name, where the trouble keeps its outline, but it doesn't keep its claim. I kept facing the front of it, like that was all I had. And the smaller way stayed open, and I used it without making it a plan. I was bracing for a hit that never learned my address. Yeah. I kept a sharp little version of the day under the sleeve of every word, ready to turn one careless second into something I deserved. Yeah. Yeah, there was a spoon on the counter with a dent near the rim. I stared at it too long like I knew where I had been. The sink kept ticking, one drop, then none, and I made a whole warning out of what hadn't come. I was trained by my own intention to answer before the call, to make myself smaller before anything moved at all. But the edge gets tired when I stop feeding it names, and the old hard sentence doesn't land the same. Not forgiven, not repaired, just less armed when it gets there. There's a gentling in the way the thought returns to me, less like a verdict, more like weather losing shape. I don't need to turn the whole thing kinda clean, I just need the sharper part to arrive a little late. There's a gentling where I used to brace for impact, where the smallest sound will make the room accuse, and I can stay with what I don't know how to answer without letting it decide what I'm allowed to do. No lesson on the wall, no sudden better me, just a towel on the rail and the floor that doesn't speak. I put one cup back wrong, then left it where it landed, a tiny crooked object with nothing to demand. That helped more than a perfect phrase, more than making sense out of a difficult day. Because sometimes the way back isn't no way back at all. It's the old voice getting quieter in shape without disappearing from the hall. I used to flinch at the future like it already knew my name. Used to make every plane test wear a heavier frame. Now the frame loses color, now the corner rounds out. Now the part that kept charging at me forgets what it was loud about. There's a gentling in the way the thought returns to me, less like a verdict, more like weather losing shape. I don't need to turn the whole thing kinda clean, I just need the sharper part to arrive a little late. There's a chilling where the old fear loses detail, where I stop making every pause become a wall. I can move with the question still beside me when it stops pretending it can answer for it all. And if I'm not ready, I can be not ready here, with one less blade inside the atmosphere. That was enough, the hard part missed its cue. Same room, same day, less of it got through. From a coat I don't remember, small black circle, loose thread hanging like a case with no offender. I used to keep every lost thing as a sign I was behind. Now I let the button stay there with this unfinished kind of time. Maybe not every missing piece has to pull the whole shelf down. Hey, maybe some things can remain apart without owning the ground. I can't leave the drawer uneven, I can leave the button unnamed. I can have a piece of something and not turn it into blame. There's no bright command and there's no push against my back, just the space around the pressure, learning how to slack. And a smaller grip, a slower claim, a rough thought with less aim. I don't become stronger, I don't become new, I just lock up in the hard part, make its case all the way through. So I stand in the kitchen with the light turned low, not waiting for a sign, not making it a show. The spoon stays dented, the button stays lost, the thought comes back, but not at any cost. There's a gentling in the way the thought returns to me, less like a verdict, more like weather losing shape. I don't need to turn the whole thing kinda clean, I just need the sharper part to arrive a little late. There's a gentling where I used to brace the impact, where the smallest sound will make the room accuse, and I can stay with what I don't know how to answer without letting it decide what I'm allowed to do. There's a gentling, but not enough. There's a gentling, but not enough to make it clear, just enough for the next small thing to come a little nearer. I was bracing for a hit that never learned my address, and when nothing came, I didn't call it hope. I just stood there, yes, ready to hurt myself first. Open enough for the thought to pass through, not wide, not clear, not asking me to bloom. I can leave the rest of the answer where it is and still make space for one small move. Open enough for the day to come nearer without turning the whole room into proof. I don't need a perfect entrance anymore, just a narrow way my doubt can't fully use. Yeah, I had 11 tabs open, all saying almost the same thing. One about the cost of leaving, one about the cost of staying. Yeah, I kept switching between them like the right line would appear, like a cleaner version of the future was hiding somewhere near. The screen dimmed twice and I called that a sign. Then I caught myself building the courtroom out of time. There's a note in the corner with no title at all, just 3 words I never used and one that doesn't belong. Maybe that's enough, not the answer, just the gap where the pressure stops speaking with his hand on my back. I don't close it, I don't solve it, I don't turn it into a plan. I just let the questions sit without becoming everything I am. And something in me loosens, not like a door flying wide, more like the curse of waiting without accusing me this time. I can be late to the meaning, I can be partial and plain, I can leave one choice loading and still step out of its frame. Open enough for the thought to pass through, not wide, not clear, not asking me to bloom. I can leave the rest of the answer where it is and still make space for one small move. Open enough for the day to come nearer without turning the whole room into proof. I don't need a perfect entrance anymore, just to narrow way my doubt can't fully use. Open enough, not open all the way, just less closed than yesterday. And if the next part comes in pieces, I can let it arrive that way. That's the part I missed, the gap was already there. I kept calling it nothing because it didn't look fair. The printer at the counter ran out halfway through my name, left the last few letters missing like it didn't need a claim. I almost made a story out of that unfinished strip, almost turned the blank part into one more reason to quit. But the clerk didn't notice the line moved on slow, and the small white paper didn't tell me where to go. That helped in a way I can't make sound important, like life stays half printed and still keeps moving forward. No clean lesson, no soft reveal, just a little less need to make every mark real. I used to need the whole sentence before I let myself begin. Used to wait for the full permission to come dressed up and let me in. Now the margin has a crack, now the rule has a seam, now the part that's in already doesn't own the whole screen. I can take the smaller version, I can take the unnamed road, I can leave the heavy question without carrying it out. Open enough for the thought to pass through, not wide, not clear, not asking me to bloom. I can leave the rest of the answer where it is and still make space for one small move. Open enough for the day to come nearer without turning the whole room into proof. I don't need a perfect entrance anymore, just to narrow way my doubt can't fully use. Open enough for the unfinished sentence, open enough for the almost true, open enough for the part of me waiting to stop asking if it's allowed to move. There's a version of relief that doesn't announce itself. It looks like not checking twice, it looks like leaving a file unshelved. It looks like a small delay that doesn't turn into blame, like the old worry reaching for me and forgetting my full name. I don't need the lock to vanish, I don't need the wall to fall, I just need one thin allowance where the pressure can't take off. So I close only one tab, leave the others in a row. Not because I found the answer, because I don't have to know. I keep the receipt folded with the missing letters showing, and I walk a little lighter without naming where I'm going. Open enough for the thought to pass through, not wide, not clear, not asking me to bloom. I can leave the rest of the answer where it is and still make space for one small move. Open enough for the day to come nearer without turning the whole room into proof. I don't need a perfect entrance anymore, just to narrow way my doubt can't fully use. Not open forever, not open for everyone, just open enough for the next small thing to come. The tab stays open, the screen goes dim. I don't rush to wake it, I don't call it a sign. Somewhere in the half float, the pressure loses track of me. I asked less for the hour, and the hour didn't leave. It sat there, was its loose ends, and made a little room for me. Not a miracle, not a message, not a light across the floor, just the weight of everything turning into not right now, yeah. I had a list with too many lines, some crossed out, some pretending. One set started getting clean, one set fixed the whole ending. Yeah. I kept the pen beside me like a judge with no face. Kept making every morning, standing for the whole case. The bag from the corner shop split a little at the side, and I almost called it perfect for the way I carry life. Too much in one hand, too much named at once. Too much future folded into one paper lunch. So I put one thing back, not because I gave up, because the day was smaller than the pressure I made up. There's a kind of distance between me and what I owe, where the next thing doesn't have to be the proof of where I'll go. I can lower the volume on the shape of the task. I can let today become a smaller ask. Make it a smaller ask. Something I can hold without turning away. Not the whole wide repair, just a corner of the day. I don't need to become the version that never falls behind. I just need one honest piece that doesn't take my whole mind. Make it a smaller ask. Something plain enough to start. Not a perfect new beginning, not a speech for the dark. If I can give the moment less to carry than before, maybe I can pass through it without closing every door. Shelf have cleared, you can leave the book unmarked. Some pages keep their meaning even when you lose the arc. There is no shame in folding only what your hands can keep. There is no proof in forcing every restless thing to speak. Yeah. Let the day be smaller, let the answer come in parts. Yeah. You are not less real when you lower what it asks. Yeah, I used to call it discipline when I made the room too tight. Set the chair against the exit, then blame myself for the fight. I used to make a staircase out of every single step, as if one missed reply could collect the whole debt. But the calendar's square, doesn't know my name. It's just a little box with a number in its frame. The sink is one plate, the floor has one shoe. The day has one handle I can reach without breaking through. So I stop making mountains from the folded edge of paper. Stop asking one small minute to explain me to later. The old voice says all of it with its familiar aim, but the room doesn't answer when I don't take the blame. Make it a smaller ask. Something I can hold without turning away. Not the whole wide repair, just a corner of the day. I don't need to become the version that never falls behind. I just need one honest piece that doesn't take my whole mind. Make it a smaller ask. Something plain enough to start. Not a perfect new beginning, not a speech for the dark. If I can give the moment less to carry than before, maybe I can pass through it without closing every door. If the larger answer stays outside my reach tonight, I can still move one small thing into a less demanding light. Let the promise lose its costume, let the plan come down from glass. Let the part that felt impossible turn into something you can pass. There is still a way of moving that doesn't call itself strong. A little less expected, a little more allowed to be wrong. I leave a list on the counter with the longest line untouched. Take the smallest one with me and decide that it is much. Not everything needs fixing before the air can change. Not every open question has to stand close to my name. I can keep the day narrow without making myself less. I can lower the demand and still mean what I meant. Make it a smaller ask. Something I can hold without turning away. Not the whole wide repair, just a corner of the day. I don't need to become the version that never falls behind. I just need one honest piece that doesn't take my whole mind. Make it a smaller act. Something plain enough to start. Not a perfect new beginning, not a speech for the dark. If I can give the moment less to carry than before, maybe I can pass through it without closing every door. Make it smaller ask. Not because I care less, but because I'm learning what can actually meet me there. I asked less of the hour, and the hour stayed near. One line still waiting, one bag split at the seam. Not everything came with me, but enough
to leave the room different.
Only this much, still a shape I can hold. Not the whole day, not the story it told. Just a cup by the window, just a wire by the floor. Just a little of the pressure, not asking for more, yeah. My phone was at 4% and I watched it stay alive. Like even almost empty can keep a little sign. The cable didn't reach right, so I sat near the wall with my knees by the outlet, not fixing much at all. There was steam from the kettle drawing lines on the glass, then disappearing early before I could make it last. I used to turn a small thing into evidence of me, like if I couldn't do it all, then none of it could breathe. But the battery held and the water got warm and the room didn't ask me to become a new form. Maybe the measure was wrong, maybe the whole thing was too wide. Maybe the next part only needs a palm-sized place to arrive. Only this much, but it counts where I am standing. Only this much, but the weight can lose aside. I don't need to carry every reason into morning. I just need one smaller piece that doesn't close inside. Only this much, and it isn't an apology. Only this much, and it doesn't mean I'm done. There's a way to give the hour one plain answer without turning every shadow into one. Yeah. Not bright enough to call a change, not clean enough to keep. Yeah, just enough to stop the thought from taking every seat. I taped the corner of a box with one strip, not two. Left the other side uneven and the bottom still came through. There was a towel on the handle, there was dust behind the screen. There were 10 different small things waiting to be seen. I picked one, left 9, didn't make a speech, didn't make a sound. The old voice tried to tell me that partial means pretend, but the taped up corner held and the sentence didn't end. Yeah, maybe enough can look awkward, maybe enough can look thin. Yeah, maybe the door doesn't open, but the latch lets something in. I've been making every morning wear the size of a year, making every ordinary pause prove I shouldn't be here. Now the demand gets smaller, not gentle, just less wide, and I can meet it halfway without losing my side. The kettle clicks once, the screen turns low, the box keeps holding what it doesn't show. Only this much, but it counts where I am standing. Only this much, but the weight can lose aside. I don't need to carry every reason into morning. I just need one smaller piece that doesn't close inside. Only this much, and it isn't an apology. Only this much, and it doesn't mean I'm done. There's a way to give the hour one plain answer without turning every shadow into one. When the old line starts demanding, when the room begins to lean, I can move a little inside what I can manage and leave the rest of it unnamed between. That's the part I missed. Small isn't the same as gone. One strip of tape, one warm cup, 1% hanging on. I don't have to widen the road, I don't have to finish the weather. I don't have to make the broken part stand up and explain itself better. There's a kind of staying that doesn't look like strength. It looks like doing less without turning it into shame. It looks like sitting close to the outlet, letting the number climb slow. Not because I'm suddenly fine, because the room finally asked low. So I leave the box half labeled, leave the towel where it dries. Leave the window slightly fogged without reading it as a sign. I give the day a smaller answer, and it doesn't throw me out. The pressure loses one corner, and that corner lets me around. Only this much, but it counts where I am standing. Only this much, but the weight can lose aside. I don't need to carry every reason into morning. I just need one smaller piece that doesn't close inside. There's a way to give the hour one plain answer without turning every shadow into one. Not a lower kind of living. Only this much. Not a reason to disappear. Just the part of me that can answer softly when the whole thing gets too near. The phone reaches 5%, and stops asking to be saved. I stay beside the wall with the cup cooling down. Only this much, and the room somehow makes room for that. Makes room for that. A little room between the thought and what it makes me do. A little room where I can stand before it turns into truth. The elevator stopped 1 floor earlier than mine, and I almost made a meaning out of being out of line. There were numbers over the door changing with a tired glow, and I kept watching them like answers had a place they had to go. Yeah. I had a sentence in my pocket folded small from overuse. Every time the day went sideways, I unfolded it as proof, but the door opened anyway, not where I planned to be. The hallway didn't ask me to decide what that should mean. Yeah. Maybe the feeling can arrive without taking the whole floor. Maybe I can let it stand there and not become its door. There's a second before I follow, there's a gap before I agree. Yeah. There's a little room inside the moment where the old shape loses me. Give me a little room before the thought becomes a reason, before I turn one wrong floor into the shape of who I am. I don't need the whole thing opened, I don't need the answer even, just the place between the pressure and the hand that makes the plan. Give me a little room where the feeling stays unfinished, where it doesn't get to name me just because it came too soon. I can move from the edge of it without calling that forgiveness, if the day can leave me standing with a little room. There was an umbrella by the entrance with a bent silver tip, leaning in the crowded stand like it forgot who left with it. I used to feel like that one small thing misplaced, waiting for a hand to choose me, waiting to be explained. But maybe not being taken isn't always being lost. Maybe something stay behind without becoming what they cost. I can leave the old comparison near the glass of the rain, let it lean there for a while without dragging in my name. That's the difference I miss, not a lesson, just a pause. I don't have to turn each absence into something with claws. The door opens wider than I thought it would. The floor keeps its number, the hallway stays ordinary, and somehow ordinary is the part that helps me through. Nothing trying to save me, nothing asking to be new. Give me a little room before the thought becomes a reason, before I turn one wrong floor into the shape of who I am. I don't need the whole thing open, I don't need the answer even, just a place between the pressure and the hand that makes the plan. Give me a little room where the feeling stays unfinished, where it doesn't get to name me just because it came too soon. I can move from the edge of it without calling that forgiveness, if the day can leave me standing with a little room. And if the old fear reaches for me with this familiar proof, I can let it miss by inches and still call that moving through. I used to answer too fast to anything that hurt. Now I let it wait with its coat still on. There's a counter almost that doesn't have to close. I counted that knowing that lets the next thing show. I can be one floor off and still not be behind. I can leave the bed umbrella where it leans outside my mind. The pressure wants a contract, the feeling wants a name, but I can keep a little distance from the shape it wants to claim. So I step out slowly, not certain not restored, just less pulled by the story I was building at the door. The numbers keep changing, the entrance keeps the rain, and I don't turn the smallest wrongness into my whole name. Give me a little room before the thought becomes a reason, before I turn one wrong floor into the shape of who I am. I don't need the whole thing opened, I don't need the answer even, just the place between the pressure and the hand that makes the plan. Give me a little room where the feeling stays unfinished, question, staying open without turning into blame. The elevator goes up without me, and I don't press the button again. I stand near the entrance with the rain still making marks. One wrong floor, one bent umbrella, one little room between me and the old answer. You don't have to bring the whole sky down just to prove there's room above you. Some things only turn reachable when they come in pieces first. I saw the day get wider when you stop naming every door. Not healed, not clean, not shining, just less taken by the floor, yeah. I had a paper bag with one side torn and a receipt curled near the fold. Get one useful thing inside it while the rest looked hard to hold. The crosswalk numbers kept blinking like they wanted me to choose. I stood there with the smaller part and called that almost losing, yeah. Maybe I don't need the full return, maybe I don't need the whole design. Maybe one piece meat in my hand can count before the rest aligns. I made the future too large, then wonder why I froze. Made one step carry every road, made one answer wear all my clothes, yeah. Now the size comes down, now the shape gets plain. Now the part I can touch stops sounding like shame. It's possible in parts, not all at once, not fully arranged. Not as a clean arrival, not as proof that I have changed. I can move the smaller piece that finally meets my hand, while the wider thing stays wider than I know how to understand. It's possible in parts where the pressure loses form, where the day becomes a corner I can pass through slightly worn. I don't need the whole permission, standing perfectly in line. Just one honest piece of motion that can still be mine. There's a mercy in the partial when the whole thing asks too much. A folded map, a missing label, still enough for one small touch. Let the larger answer wait there, let it keep its clouded face. You are not less close to living when you take the smaller place. At the self-checkout, one item failed. The red light blinked above the screen. I almost left the basket there over something ordinary, yeah. And someone laughed 2 lanes away at their own wrong skin, and the whole hard little system lost the power in its hand, yeah. So I scanned what wanted scanning, left one thing aside, walked out with a smaller answer and no reason to make it wide. One part steps forward,
One part stays close,
one part keeps asking what
nobody knows.
but they don't need agreement to let the next thing start. So motion gets assembled from the least convinced parts.
It's possible in parts, not all at once, not fully arranged. Not as a clean arrival, not as proof that I have changed. I can move the smaller piece that finally meets my hand, while the wider thing stays wider than I know how to understand.
It's possible in parts where the pressure loses form, where the day becomes a corner I can pass through slightly worn.
I don't need the whole permission, stand perfectly in line.
Just one honest piece of motion that can still be mine. And if the rest stays far from language,
If the bigger shape won't clear,
I can take what comes in fragments
and let that bring me here. Take only what can meet you, leave the rest without a name. There is no need to force the weather into something it became.
If your hands can hold one portion, let that portion be allowed.
Not everything that matters
Has to enter all at once. So I carry one small bag through the automatic doors, with the receipt folded sideways and the rest still asking more. The parking lot is ordinary, no sign written in the air. Just the weight inside the simple thing, coming apart enough to spare. I was not ready as a whole, but one part noodle out. And sometimes that is where the day
lets the next piece out.
It's possible in parts,
Not all at once, not fully arranged,
not as a clean arrival.
not as proof that I have changed.
I can move the smaller piece that finally meets my hand, while the wider thing stays wider.
Then I know how to understand.
It's possible in parts,
Where the pressure loses form,
where the day becomes a corner.
I can pass through slightly worn,
I don't need the whole permission,
stand perfectly in line.
just one honest piece of motion
That can still be mine. The basket stays behind, with the wheel turned wrong,
I leave with one small bag,
and the rest of the day
not solved.
just no longer